Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews, and surprise, it's another fairly small week. We usually don't, it doesn't seem like we get, first of all, I'm not complaining. I actually prefer smaller weeks. It gives me a chance to actually, one, read more stuff, and also make sure that we keep up with some of the ongoing series that I like and that I always try to highlight and kind of keep you, hey, this title you need to still be looking at. So so let's get started. The first one, we're going to start off with the big one. Harley Quinn 30th Anniversary Special #1. Okay, so there's 10 stories. So the first, so we have Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti writing with Chad Hardin as the artist. Raphael Scavone writing with Raphael Albuquerque as the artist. Stepan Sijic, writer and artist. Stephanie Phillips writing. Riley Rossmo is the artist. Kami Garcia is the writer with Miko Cyan and Jason Badoer as the artist. Paul Dini is the writer with Guillaume Marsh as the artist. Sam Humphries writing. Erica Henderson as the artist. Rob Williams writer. John Timms is the artist. Cecil Castellucci writer with Dan Hipp doing the artwork. Mindy Lee and Terry Dodson writing with Terry Dodson doing pencils and Rachel Dawson doing the inks. So as always, I always base any of these special event books on, so it's a $10 list price. There's 10 stories. So it's $1 a story. So the question kind of always comes down to what percentage is it, and my ultimate goal is if you can hit 70%, the 7 stories that are worth being in there. And you can always have 3 that's like, okay, maybe they weren't great, but the 7 make up for it. So we'll kind of go down the list of each story. So the first one is Uncommon Bonds, and it has Harley and Alfred defending Wayne Manor. Harley runs across this this gang that is using computers to figure out where where to break in and where certain might be rich places. Now one would think that Wayne Manor would just be an easy break in, but anyways, that's the setup. And it's really great because we know that Alfred has MI6 background, so but it's a lot of fun because it's him and Harley defending that, and it's really great because what it is her stuffed beaver he actually fixed one time, so she owes Alfred a favor. So it's really a fun story. As always, Connor and Palmiotti write fun. I mean, they wrote Harley Quinn for so long and they know how to do it. And Chad Hardin was one of the main artists on their run, and it's really a fun story. It really gets the book off to a really great start. The next one is Cease and Deceased. It has Harley on a Suicide Squad mission with 15-Minute Man. And so they go to, Amanda sends them on this case, and they go and find out that it's actually child labor that is making superhero figures, and so Harley gets them out, and there's a really good joke with 15-Minute Man, and I don't want to ruin it, but it's actually a good story. That one's Scavone and Albuquerque doing the artwork, and that one's it's a fun little story. Then we have Submissive by Sejic. That's really interesting. One, he's a really great artist, so visually it's a really beautiful story. But what he does is he has Catwoman explaining to Harley that she's submissive. Hey, with the Joker was, hey Puddin', hey Mr. J. So of course she's a psychologist, so she gets pissed off because Catwoman's totally right. So she has this idea. Well, I'm gonna go prove her wrong. So she goes to attack the Penguin. It kind of doesn't work out so well. But then Ivy comes and basically saves her. But then there's a flashback to Catwoman talking to Ivy saying, well, you know, that Harley needs to be, she's submissive and you're the replacement for the Joker. So there's that. It's really a funny story. It's really, really well done and has a great sense of humor. I really like that story a lot. So then we have, we have the Stephanie. The Stephanie Phillips Riley. I almost missed one. How to Train Your Hyenas. So what it was is she left Bud and Lou, her hyenas, in a wildlife preserve. So she goes back to see if they'll come back to her. That her babies will come back. So while she's there, you have these hunters that are illegally hunting the animals that are in the wildlife preserve. So Harley is like, she gets pissed off. And so in her quest to find Bud and Lou, she gets involved with that. And it's really a fun story. I'm a huge fan of Riley Rossmo. He was perfect for the story. Philip's story is a lot of fun. So that one's another win. Criminal Sanity is probably one of the more interesting ones. That's the Garcia, Soya and Badoer story, and it's basically Harley before she was Harley Quinn as a psychologist, and she helps solve a copycat Joker murder with Commissioner Gordon. That one's really interesting. The artwork is really, really it has that kind of realistic sort of kind of Alex Ross sort of feel to it. It's a really intriguing story. It's very different from I think most of the rest of the stories because it's a very straight, sort of crime detective story, but it's really quite interesting. I think it fits in really well as like it gives a different look at Harley, before she was Harley Quinn, when she was Harley Quinzel. Then we have Siren Soiree by Paul Dini. Which is actually because Paul Dini and Bruce Timm actually created Harley Quinn for the animated series. She eventually appeared in the comics. So basically, now that Harley, Catwoman, and Ivy are all living in the same apartment or place, Harley gets this brilliant idea. Let's have a party. And she invites all the female villains she knows, but then she invites Wonder Woman and Batgirl, and it's just and so Selena and Ivy just first of all, they didn't want to have it, and then they're like, okay, you can invite like 2 people. It tends to be a whole crowd. It's really like a girls' night out type story, and it's really funny. And of course, Denny is really good at that, and Marsh's artwork is absolutely gorgeous. He draws women quite well. It's really a fun story, and then the fact that he threw in Wonder Woman, Batgirl, just really is truly icing on the cake of that story. Then we have A Legend Is Born. That one's the Humphrey Henderson story, and it's really interesting because what it is Harley is telling this fable story of how like it's like in medieval times where she's a waitress, but everybody thinks she's a jester because her outfit. And so she gets this idea of like, if I get rich, I can go buy a sword, and then I can be like a hero, and I won't have to be what everybody thinks of me as a jester. So she goes on this quest, and it's just really funny. Humphreys does a really good job, and I'm a huge fan of Erica Henderson. She drew the Unbiddable Squirrel Girl forever, and she was really perfect for that fairy tale story that Humphrey came up with. That one's a lot of fun. Then we have, what do we have? Legends Born. The last Harley story, which is, Rob Williams and John Timms. And literally what it is, it literally is like the last story where Amanda Waller, basically sets off the bomb in her head, but before she actually dies, she has this whole dream of Amanda basically sends not so much a bomb, but like a message through it, because everybody has a phone, to where there's no crime anymore, and Harley's the only one that like, well, wait a second, that just doesn't work. I want to have. So she goes on this crime spree, and And so she kind of wins. And so it's really interesting because it could have been like a really kind of depressing last Harley story. It's basically an imaginary take, and I really like that. Tim's artwork's really good, and of course Williams' script is really really quite fun. Then we have Troop Harley, which by Castellucci and Dan Hipp, which is so Harley wants to have this Girl Scout troop. She wants to have her own troop. She's like, I can do that. So she gets these girls together, and she basically does teach them like life skills, but in a kind of a weird, different way. Like one of them is like learning computers, but the girl learns to hack things, and it's really funny. And Dan Hipp has been doing a lot of like covers for like DC and stuff. Really wonderful artist. This is the first time I've really seen him do interior work, and it really is perfect setting for his artwork with the Girl Scouts and everything. It's a really funny story. Has a great final surprise at the end that's really good. And the final story by Mindy Lee and Terry Dodson is what it is it's Harley. She has these adventures, and you find out it's just her imagination of what she would do if she was actually out in the world, but she's actually in prison. And it's really interesting. And Dodson was actually one of the original artists on Harley Quinn, so it was actually kind of coming home for him to do this story. So that was quite interesting. Surprisingly, it's a big win because all 10 stories are really good. I mean, once again, the Garcia one is just different. I did like it because it was different. It was very serious, and I like kind of the crime noirish type aspect of the story. But once again, they were all good. The art was great on all of them. There were none that like I didn't like. I liked them all, and I appreciated the different takes on Harley. I think that was the kind of the most interesting thing, that all these stories were very different. So some of them were just straight up like the Savone Albuquerque one is a pretty straightforward, just Harley Suicide Squad type mission, but that's fine because it's not like any of the other ones. So I think that's what really makes this package really quite interesting, is that all the stories are different. They kind of tell a different side of Harley. Some of them are fun, some of them are serious, some of them are a mix of it, and it all works out. And of course, having the Paul Dini one is really nice because one, it's a lot of fun, but having the original creator back doing a Harley story is well worth it. So it's a big win for this one, so I would say it's well worth the $10. So next up we have Vanish #1, written by Donny Cates with artwork by Ryan Stigman. So what this is, you have Oliver, who is, so he's in the real world, and he's going home, he's drunk, and then all of a sudden he gets attacked, and then this new superhero comes and saves him. So then it flips back to Oliver. So what it is, there was this kind of alternate dimension, or part of our alternate version of our world, where kids who have magical powers go to train. Think of, I guess, like Harry Potter type thing. And what it is, there's Baron Vanish and his gang basically go to the school to like say, hey, this is, it's like the Voldemort thing. You guys aren't good. You come with me. And so what it is Oliver actually breaks into there's a magic vault that you're not allowed to go into. He breaks in, and so he ends up killing the Baron, but like his henchmen get away. So he grows up, he comes back to the real world, and just like kind of doesn't know what to do. I guess, it's not really said, but that seems to be. And what he finds out is that the superhero that saves him is actually one of the Baron's goons, like his goon squad. And what they've done, they've come to Earth, and they're a superhero team named the Prestige. So he finds, he thought he had dealt with everything by killing the Baron. Well, he finds out that they're are obviously they're being superheroes, but are they superheroes? We don't quite know. And it's kind of an interesting premise. I wouldn't say that I was particularly like overwhelmed with this first issue. I think it's a good start. I think there's a good premise here. Cates sets things up really well, but even though there's a lot of exposition, it's paced really well. But and then Stigman's artwork. It's a really good looking book. It's really a pretty book. I would say it didn't grab me as much as Crossover did with its first issue, but I think it's off to a good start, and I think that's always a good thing. I mean, I think there's enough reason to come back for a second issue. I think there's enough setup here, but once again, it's hard to really 100% tell what this series is going to be like from this first issue. Now, that's not a bad thing. I think it's just like it's got an interesting premise. Let's see where it goes from there. So I do think I think it's worth checking out. In that respect, yes, it is worth checking out. I just think I wasn't necessarily, blown away by the first issue, but that's okay. First issue sometimes doesn't necessarily blow you away. But as long as it's got a good premise, then, like this does, I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have The Lonesome Hunters, number 4, written and drawn by Tyler Crook. So what we have is Howard and Lupe have gone to where the Crow Queen lives to give back the watch that they want. And then we found out in the last issue, she doesn't want the watch. She wants the sword. The sword is the power that Howard has. So Howard's in trouble, and Lupe goes in, and they basically kill the queen. But then we find out that this is not really the end of the story. That's, I think, what is a great twist. Is so he decides, hey, I'll return the sword. I never really wanted the sword. And so now we learn that his friend that he's been staying with, she's have some kind of connection to the church. We're not quite sure. And then we find out that at the end, and it's not really, it's a bit of a spoiler, but there's this man or creature or something that apparently is the owner of the sword. So that really flips this story quite well, because it finishes off the Crow part, but there's obviously much more story. There's more story to it than just that. That is really interesting. I have to give Crook that this has been a really intriguing story, and I really like it. And his artwork is absolutely amazing. This is a really fabulous book, and I know we're on the 4th issue. If you have not been reading this, please, when the trade comes out, unless Crook blows it in the last issue, I can't see that he's going to do it. He gets this, like I said, the flip on the story from here was amazing. I really love this issue, and check it out. If your local comic shop still has the first 3 issues in this, definitely go buy this. This is a really must-buy book. I really, really like this. Next up, we have Batman One Bad Day, Two-Face number 1, written by Mariko Tamaki with artwork by Javier Fernandez. So what it is each month there's going to be a Batman One Bad Day with a villain. Last month we had Mitch Gerrits and Tom King they did a Joker story. Or no, they did a Riddler story. I'm sorry, Joker hasn't come up yet, but there's going to be villains. So they start off with Riddler, and theirs was really dark. That one was really dark. This one I think is interesting, and I want to forewarn people, not in a bad way, that was more of like a what if, more of an Elseworlds type story, because Riddler, it got really dark. And while that was really good, Tamaki's story is more of a kind of straightforward story, but I think it's interesting because what it is. So it's the story about his dad's having his 88th birthday, and so this is the Harvey Dent that is good. He's the new DA. And so what it is he's throwing the party, but he intercepts a note saying that he's, if you have this, if the party goes through, your father's going to die. So he basically hires Batman to investigate who would want not so much per se murder his dad, but want revenge against Harvey to kill his dad. And so that's kind of the interesting, it's definitely more of a detective type story, and I don't really want to say what ultimately happens. I don't want to spoil it, but I think it's a really good story, but it's much more low key than the previous Riddler, the King, and Jared's. And I think that some people are going to be maybe not as overwhelmed, but I still think it's a really good story. It just may not, I think it just grabs you in a very different way because of the way that the story starts and it goes through, how the pacing of the story. And I think that's what makes it really interesting. And I really like how Tamaki laid out the story. Fernandez's artwork is really, really nice. It has, I don't want to say it looks like Tim Sale, but it has that feeling of how Tim used shadows and stuff like that. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that is a visual connection, where Fernandez is definitely using shadows and shades and to really tell this story visually. Like I said, I think it's just different, and I appreciate that. And I think hopefully that all these One Bad Day books are different from each other, and some of them are going to be really different, like the Riddler compared to this one, but that's what I like about it. I think it's just different voices telling, different talent doing each of these specials, and I think it's really, I like this one. We'll see what next month brings us. Next up, we have X-Terminators #1, written by Lee Williams, with artwork by Carlos Gomez. Now, I'll be really honest. It's hard for me to read X-Men books because most of the new books that come out are so tied up in continuity to the Krakatoa Island and all the characters and stuff, where it's really difficult for new readers to come in to get these books. I really have to give Williams that this one, you don't need to know anything. So what it is, so it's got Dazzler, Boom Boom, and Jubilee. And so what it is Dazzler breaks up with her boyfriend. And so she calls up Boom Boom and Jubilee. She wants a girls' night out. Let's go get drunk. I broke up with my boyfriend. Let's just have a girls' night. So they go to this bar, and the first of all, it's weird that this bar is empty, but they go there because it's around the corner. And you find out that her ex is a vampire, and she didn't know about it. And so they all get drugged, and then they get separated, where Dazzler is in like this maze, but if she uses her powers, these creatures they feed off of light. And so each one is separated, but they end up getting back together. But then it's like, then at the end, there's another character that shows up, but I wouldn't say that the book blew me away. Like, it wasn't the most amazing thing, but I think what I liked about it was just kind of fun. And I have to give Williams that it's very accessible, which is really, I think, been lacking in the X-Men books, is because you can't just really jump into any of them because there's all this continuity that's been going on. And this is just fun. I mean, that's what I think what happens with a lot of these ongoing books, they get so tied up in themselves that it's hard for new readers to come in. And this book is really just very easy to get into. You don't even need to know the characters. They kind of, they give you enough to explain what their powers are. And then Gomez's art's actually really nice. It's a really nice looking book. It's fun. I wouldn't say that it's something I'm going to read on a regular basis, but I have to say, if you're looking for an X-Men book to jump into that really doesn't have has zero baggage going in, this is the one. So if you're looking for that, I would check it out. If you're just looking for an X-Men book, it's worth checking out. I thought it was a lot of fun. Next up, we have Nightwing 96. Written by Tom Taylor, with artwork by Bruno Redondo. So this is really the big, somewhat finale of the Battle of Bloodhaven with Blockbuster. And so we really there's a knockdown drag out fight with Nightwing and Blockbuster, um, and it's basically the battle for Bloodhaven. Now it is not over, but I will put it this way: the storyline with Blockbuster is definitely over this issue. And that's all I'll say. But it was really good, solid ending to the Blockbuster part of the story. And there's more that comes out of it towards the end. I certainly do not want to give it away. It was really a solid issue. It was really good. It just, once again, this book really amazes me every month. It's really, really good. Tom Taylor, just like, the stories are really good because it's really character driven. Even this battle is really character driven in that. And there's great twists and turns with the story. How they basically defeat Blockbuster. It's really, really well done. And Redondo, just as always, just his artwork's gorgeous. It really is just wonderful. This is a book I cannot recommend. This is honestly one of the best Nightwing books I have almost ever read. It's really good, and it really just, you just need to buy it. It really is that simple. It's that good. Next up, we have Stuff of Nightmares #1, written by R.L. Stein with artwork by A.L. Kaplan. So apparently there's a lot of, like, we don't want to give our first name away. So what this is, it's an ongoing story. So what this first issue is, I don't know if each issue is going to have a separate story. It could, because it says to be continued, so I don't know if it's going to continue this part of the story, but I think it's hard to say. So what it is this group of 3 young scientists are working on some weird experiment with body parts. And so then it cuts to this girl who wants to be a reporter on the beach, but nobody buys newspapers anymore, and she's with her boyfriend. They hear this noise. They go to where they hear the noise, and it's where the scientists have been doing Frankenstein type experiments. That's the best way to describe it. They go there, and there's this little boy that they've kind of created. He just keeps saying, "Help me, help me." And so they discover, first they're going to kill him, but then they're like, oh, well, maybe we need to get our story out that we've done this good thing. Dr. Frankenstein, I'm making life out of death. And so, but then there's the creatures that didn't quite turn out as well as the kid. And so, that happens. It's kind of interesting. I wouldn't say, I wasn't really overwhelmed with it. I think there was a good idea. I think the problem was it's kind of a story that you've somewhat read before, and there wasn't like really a great twist to it. And not to say that it was bad. It was just like, it kind of felt been there, done that. And that didn't help its case. I mean, overall, I'm not really necessarily compelled to really go to a second issue. It was kind of like that. It's fine. It was okay to read. The artwork by Kaplan, it's okay. It's kind of a little, there's some inconsistency. I don't think it's terrible, but it's not bad. It's just kind of okay artwork. I mean, it didn't like, I wasn't offended by it, but I didn't overwhelm. It's okay. It got the job done. I think the problem is it was okay. There is another horror book coming up, in a couple, that was really kind of the better. It was ironic they came out the same day. But that was the better of the two. But first up, we have Batman Superman World's Finest #7, written by Mark Waid, with artwork by Dan Mora. So this one is a new character, the Boy Thunder David, who is so basically think of the Superman origin. He's shot into from Krypton. It's going to explode. This is David is being sent from like a alternate dimension, an alternate Earth, and basically travels through time, but does like how Flash travels. And so he is sent from Gotham, and he is sent to Earth. And so when he gets to Earth, he has powers, but his powers are kind of different. We find out that so he gets like too much like sun, and just kind of doesn't explode, but just like gets really white hot. So they take him to Kandor. They do some experiments, and they kind of like, okay, these are your powers, but you got to kind of control them. And so then they take him to Gotham to show him, because it's an alternate universe, and the version of his parents are here. So he goes, he's like, Mom, Dad, and what it is the David on this Earth, our Earth, or whatever Earth the Superman Batman is. I think it's Earth 1. Their David was killed as a kid, so he basically lost his parents twice. So that's really the setup here. It's really, I love what Wade and Maura are doing here. They're just writing fun stories, good solid comic book stories. And the first story arc was great. I really liked it a lot. It's just, these are not deep, heavy stories. They're just fun stories. And that's honestly, those are really great, because there's no, the first story arc was 6 issues. So we'll see. I don't know how long this story arc is going to be, but it's just fun. So the good thing is, if you haven't read the first story arc, you can just jump right in, because it's a brand new story arc. There's no continuity from that previous story arc. And it's just, the story's good. Dan Moore's art's incredible. I love him, and he's just he draws a really good superhero stuff. So once again, if you haven't been reading, this is a good jumping on point where you can start the new story arc. Next up, we have Creepshow #1. Now, there's 2 stories in it. The first story is by Chris Burnham, with artwork by Adriano Lucas. And then the second story is written by Paul Denny and Stephen Langford, with artwork by John McCrae. So so this is the one that is just honestly better than Stuff of Nightmares. So there's 2 stories. They're both short stories. So the first one is about, it takes place on Halloween. This kid, and then there's kind of 2 bully kids, older kids, that are kind of bullying him. They go up to the house, and supposedly the guy who lived there died, but there's a bowl of candy, and it has full-size candy bars, says take one. So they tell the kid, the bullies tell the kid, oh, we'll take 2, nobody will know. So he ends up taking 2. And then they take the rest of them, and then they're basically, the ghost of the dead guy that lived at the house comes back to haunt them, and it does not turn out well. It's like it is Creepshow. They're basically like once again, they're like EC type stories, which is really what the inspiration for Creepshow was. And the first story is really, really good. The second story is even wilder. So what it is that they this divorced couple, the mom is having a birthday party for the daughter, and the dad was supposed to hire like a clown or something. That didn't turn out well, and so then she ends up getting, like, out of thin air, that there's this character called Shingo that's like this he's kind of like a giant Muppet or whatever. And so he comes to the party, but then he eats all the food, but he's still hungry. Then he starts eating the guest and everything. And then the dad shows up with this hooker, that's like playing a princess. And yeah, it's wild. Chaos ensues. It is a hilarious story. It's really, it definitely falls into the Creepshow, but it definitely has a lot of dark humor to it. That was a lot of fun. The artwork, I love John McCrae, so he was really, really funny, especially doing like Shingo, who's kind of cartoony, but he's also kind of creepy and scary. And he really runs that fine line visually. He does that really nice job with that. And it was really a lot of fun. Look, they're not deep stories. They're just good, short horror stories, and the Creepshow is definitely the one to pick up this week. Definitely over Stuff of Nightmares. I did really enjoy it. Next up, we have X-Men Legend #2, written by Roy Thomas with artwork by David Watcher. So this is the second part of the Wolverine story that takes place before Giant Size X-Men #1. It takes place in between Hulk 180, 181 and Giant Size X-Men. And so what it is him and this other, I think, mutant. He's made out of diamond. They have to go to steal something, and they get there and they find out that there's other X-Men there, but then they're not really X-Men. And really, the thing is, I like the first issue. The first issue was kind of fun and really had a setup. This one just really, I think Thomas just really overthought the second part of this. It's just bogged down by like dialogue, and the story kind of gets really convoluted. And it's weird because the first part was pretty straightforward stuff. And it just, there were some good ideas in the wrap up to this story, but ultimately it was kind of confusing and convoluted after a while. And like I said, there was just so much dialogue that it just kind of, I don't know, it just really, for me, it really fell apart. I don't think it was terrible. It just wasn't as good as the first issue. And then it just kind of like, I got to the end, I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. Which is really a shame because like I said, I like the concept of it. It just really just kind of died in the second half. It just felt like Roy didn't know where he was going. I will say, Watcher's art, the artwork's really nice, but you know, he can only do so much. Like I said, it just droned on, and it was kind of sad. And finally this week we have Public Domain #4, written and drawn by Chip Zdarsky. So as we learned from last issue, that Sid, the guy who created the superhero characters, we found out that he actually he owns the characters. So the corporation that Dee and Jerry run, they make a deal because they basically could totally get screwed. Like, he could have walked away with everything, but he decides all he wants is the comic book rights. So it allows him to just do the comic, and he owns it 100%. And and they'll pay him a fee for like using the characters for like movies and merchandise and stuff, but like, you know, $1,000 a month. And so he agrees to that, and his two, because really he kind of makes a deal because he has two sons, Miles, who has gambling debts, and they're going to pay off the debt. And then David, the other one, is like, you know, trying to balance, you know, trying to hold the family together with all this chaos going on. So really the reason that Sid wanted the rights back is because what they've done to the character in the comics is not really what, you know, they've turned it, you know, it's kind of like the whole dark, bloody, you know, kind of thing, and that's not what he really intended the characters to be. And he wants to bring it back to basics. He wants to bring it back to the characters that he created. And so there's that going on. And what's interesting is now there's something going on with Jerry. Jerry's not happy about the deal that Dee, his sister, made to give him the rights to the book back. You know, so there's that. He's pissed, and he's coming back to like New York or whatever. It's like, cause he's pissed and he doesn't want the deal to go through. So then you have Tonya, that was Jerry's assistant, who she discovered the paperwork, the fact that Sid owns it. She got fired, but now she comes back to Sid, and it's like she wants some money because she thought, well, he's going to make a bunch of money off of this. And so she's actually a comic writer, and Sid's like, So yeah, that's where we land at the end of this issue, that Jerry's pissed. The kids are going to be involved with doing the comic, and Sid wants to do the comic. And now we have Tonya in the she's going to be writing the comic, apparently. So it's really interesting because I think this book is really timely. It's Zdarsky's really hit on something that's very interesting, but even though it's a fictional story, there's really some interesting things. I mean, you can insert, you know, Bob Kane, Bill Finger, Jack Kirby, any creator that kind of ultimately got screwed over, Siegel and Schuster, that got screwed over by corporations or owners and stuff. The fact that, what if they got to own the character again? So that's really an interesting concept for this book. And once again, there's not a lot of action stuff. This is really a dramatic book. And Zdarsky, I really like the story. The artwork, it's not fancy or anything, but it fits the story really well, because once again, most of the time they're standing around talking. So it's really an interesting story. I'm really digging it, and I think it's a book you should definitely be checking out. I think it's really it's not only timely but entertaining at the same time. That's gonna do it. We got through it pretty good. I mean, I know the Harley Quinn took up a lot of time, but there's 10 stories, so you just gotta take your time. As always, public service announcement. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics, Long Beach, California. Ryan Skinner runs a great store there. There's Annie, there's Eduardo, there's Derek, there's Wendy. It's a great store. It's a fun store. He offers discounts. He has a pull service. That way you don't miss any issues. He gives a discount if you join the pull service. It doesn't cost anything. You just get it. It's like getting free money because he gives you a discount. He offers discounts on trades, graphic novels. They also have a nice selection of manga that they offer a discount. A really good store. Check it out. If you're in the Long Beach area, it's a really good store to check out. If you live in the LA area, there's a sister store, same name, completely different ownership. Chris and her team, it's Pulp Fiction Culver City. It's once again, they have the same discounts and stuff. Really good store. Definitely, once again, support your local comic shop. It's always important. They are the backbone of this industry. And as always, we end our show with please be kind. Kindness goes a long way. Things are tough all over. Everybody has lots of problems. Trust me, inflation, food, everything's expensive. Comics are expensive. I get it. I totally get it, folks. But being kind doesn't cost anything. Being kind is it'll make you feel good. It'll make other people feel good. And it's definitely a good thing. So please take care of yourselves out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, and please be kind to each other. This is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com signing off. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, it's watching, comments, appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week with some more new comics to review. So once again, this is Steven from Pop Culture Maven signing off. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.